Okay, travel with Kyle, Mexico. So I cross into Mexico from Brownsville, Texas. And I go into some town, I can't remember the name of it, which is right on the eastern coast. And I saw the Rio Grande River, and it was a swamp. You could have walked across it. Um, and I go, and there's this like pedestrian mall there, and I get a hotel room, and I think at first I went to the bank. I didn't speak any Spanish at all. I took like a semester or something of Spanish, like when I was like a freshman in college, but I didn't know any Spanish. And I took some when I was in seventh grade, but pretty much did not. And the lady didn't even speak English at this bank, but she did say cross the street, say where I could get money from a money machine. And then I saw some kid who was talking, just said a couple of words, so I thought he was fluent in English, and I started talking to him, and I realized he didn't know any English. I don't recall Mexicans really speaking English. But I got a room on this mall, and then I realized that I didn't have some stuff I needed for bikes, so I rode back into Brownsville and to the bike shop, which was interesting. That I could go back into America so easily from being in Mexico. Like I could have been living really cheaply in Mexico and then working in America and just coming across. So then I went back into Mexico again, and then I rode down south. And it was like crossing into Mexico was like total culture shock, totally different from America. And as I went farther south, I could just tell, it's in another country. The roads were a lot more crowded. Older trucks and cars and like outside cafes and stuff like that. So I did have some weed that this kid named Marky gave me. This guy named Marky gave me that I brought across. So I pulled on the side of the road and I'd smoke some, and then ride, and it wasn't as hot in Mexico as it was in Texas. So I was okay to ride throughout the day. And I think maybe because I was right next to the ocean, even though I couldn't see the ocean the whole time. But and so I stayed at hotels and went down. I think it ended up taking me something like 11 days to get from like Austin to Mexico City. So I'm like riding like maybe 100, 110 or something like that miles a day. And there were some parts where the roads weren't that crowded once I was out in the boonies. But there were lots of outdoor like burrito stands. The burritos were good. They were different from in America, but they were good enough. And I stopped in this place. I can't remember what it's called, but I just stayed in like a place called Tampico, which was interesting. And then rode and stayed, and then checked out I stayed in one town just north of El Tajin, or El Tajin in English, which is one of the more northernmost Mayan ruins. And it was really interesting because it's like really, really packed, like lots of pyramids. Not so big, but they're totally jam-packed together. Another beautiful place. But I looked at the stones, these granite stones, and they were cut perfectly. Like you cut them with a laser. And so I don't know how those Mayans cut it, but they used some kind of special technology. And I didn't even know like Mayans back then had like iron tools, but I didn't even know if an iron tool could have done this. This is like perfectly cut granite stone. But oh yeah, and then at the mouth I saw the Mexicans, like I guess the Mayans had some traditional thing where they would hang by their feet from the top of some tower, and then they would like unwind as they flew down. So anyway, so I spent 2 nights in that town. Then I rode up towards Mexico City. So it was basically straight up, and it was really fun because I was kind of getting into shape. And I was on a mountain bike, not carrying too much weight, just on the backside. And so I was hammering up this hill, hardcore, like hammering, strong. And and then tons of switchbacks, and I could see how all the vegetation was changing, like from jungle to more temperate climate. And I stopped at one restaurant, and they took like an hour to give me fish, and totally wasted my time. It pissed me off. but I finally got it, and then I got on the road, and but I was going up. It's just like almost as fast as these old trucks they have. So I grabbed onto the back of one, and it pulled me all the way to the top. And then I think there was another one that passed me that I was drafting off of, and I think they were even helping me because when they pulled off, they waved to me. And then I rode down into some town that was like 60 miles north of Mexico City. I can't remember what it's called, but it was in the kind of the northern part of the valley. And I could see how they were constructing some superhighway. It was like some big, deep crevice that was kind of going off. So maybe it's done by now. I don't know. It goes all the way to the coast. But I stayed there, and then the next day I rode from that town into Mexico City. And but I stayed like 2 hours in Teotihuacan, checking out all those pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon. I guess the Pyramid of the Sun is like the third biggest pyramid in the world, after the Great Pyramid, and even bigger than the second biggest pyramid in Egypt. And the biggest pyramid was actually in Pueblo, Mexico, which is actually kind of like grown over. But it was cool. It was like the perfect setting for a movie. I think maybe Beastmaster was filmed there, but just seeing that in its heyday would have been beautiful. It was a huge complex, lots of other little mini pyramids, and I think it was in the northern end of some big lake that was there when the Spaniards first got there. But once Teotihuacan is pretty much the northern end of Mexico City, because I had to pee, and when I left I couldn't find a single place to pee because it was just packed with people. I think I eventually had to go into a place or something. And I went in, and I was like a northern part where there was this big hill just north of the center part of Mexico City. So you could go around this way or around this way. And I asked all these people what's the best way to get there, and they kept saying this way. But I went down really far, and I kind of felt like I wasn't going into Mexico City. I thought they were lying. So I decided to turn around, but it was raining really heavily. So heavily that none of the cars could drive on the road. There was a river about 2 feet in the road. And I had to even, I could like barely ride my bike through it. And the only cars that could drive it were these trucks, these big buses. And so I grabbed on the back of them, and they'd pull me through. And then little kids were playing in it, and it could actually sweep some people away. It was like it was a river in the road. And so I was riding through this. I went around the other end of the mountain and riding through the water. And it was kind of getting dark when I finally got into the center of Mexico City, where there's that huge plaza. I think it's like the biggest plaza I've ever seen. It's huge. And I got a hotel room, and I was really sick. I think I was sick. I was there for like 4 days because I was just really sick with a fever. Maybe because I was just riding my bike too hard. Sometimes I get sick when I ride too much. It happened to me in Morocco because of that. So I was there, but I saw all the sights. Mexico City is beautiful, one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen, because they have from the central square to the, I guess, top of a hill north of it, where the king or something, whatever you call the magistrate, lived. You know, there's this big palace that I saw, and there's this big avenue like the Champs-Élysées that just goes directly from the plaza to this hill. And the hill was in this big, giant park that had really wide roads that was closed off to cars that I rode my bike around, and they had lots of different cool stuff going on there. I got some food, and I saw all the museums, and there were lots of Aztec pyramids right next to the plaza. When the Spaniards came and took over the Aztecs, they built their churches right on top of the pyramids. And so they had this one church painted in red right on the south side of the plaza. But it was because they built it on a lake, it was wet, and the church was totally on its side, like this. You could see that building laying on its side, and some other buildings also. And then just next to that, they had excavated the Aztec pyramids, and you could see the side of it up like this. And it was cool, and inside was a really good museum of the Aztec Empire. Ooh, I guess that Mexico would have another part.